Good afternoon and welcome to the Monday edition of Just Parlays with Chris King. I, of course, am your host, Chris King. As you see, still nobody next to me on the screen here, so we'll get you through the Monday night game because it's the only game on the docket tonight. Also, before we get started, I want to say Happy Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day or whatever you want to call it here in the United States. And happy Thanksgiving to our friends of the border as they enjoy an exciting CFL matchup this afternoon that started about an hour ago between the Ottawa Red Blacks and the Montreal Alouettes. Ottawa leading 7-6 midway through the second quarter in that one. Hopefully everybody's having a good start to the week. And if your job gives you the day off since it's a federal holiday, hopefully you're enjoying the time off. With that said, an exciting weekend of college football and NFL action has come and gone. The wild card round of the playoffs for baseball also gone. 3 of those series were over Saturday. So, a lot of those teams probably just figured, hey, we could have just played one game and been done with it rather than playing 2 and having to waste another starter to get there. So we know who's going to play who in the division series starting tomorrow. All 4 of those games will take place on Tuesday. We've got the Mariners who rallied from an 8-1 deficit to beat the Blue Jays 10-9 Saturday. To advance, they'll face Houston. Philadelphia will get a crack at the Braves after the Phillies took down the Cardinals. Of course, they rallied in Game 1 with 6 runs in the ninth to erase a 2-0 deficit before winning on Saturday to close that out. Cleveland, fresh off their 2-game sweep of Tampa Bay, including the longest scoreless game in Major League postseason history, as that game was decided in the bottom of the 15th inning on a home run by Oscar Gonzalez Saturday, will travel to face the Yankees. And in a matter of, familiarity breeding contempt, the San Diego Padres, who knocked out Tim Earle's Mets yesterday, blanking them 6-0 on one hit in a decisive Game 3, will travel to the City of Angels to take on the Los Angeles Dodgers, who finished the regular season 111-51, running away with home field advantage in the National League. Bill, the CFL game that's going on is going on now. There aren't any other CFL games tonight. They all played over the weekend. Winnipeg blew past Edmonton. Toronto edged BC. And Hamilton slipped by Saskatchewan. So the next CFL games we have on the slate are Friday. Got 2 Friday, 2 Saturday next week. It'll be Montreal at Ottawa, so they'll just flip spots. Hamilton will go to Calgary to take on Cody Fajardo and the Stampeders. The Argonauts will travel to Edmonton to take on the Elks. Still weird calling them the Elks. I got so used to calling them the Eskimos. And Winnipeg will go to BC to close out the Saturday night doubleheader on CBC. Yeah, there is a Thanksgiving game. They started at 1 o'clock. Buddy asked me what happened to the points in the Ravens game. To be honest, I don't know. They moved the ball fairly well for long stretches. There was a couple turnovers. Cincinnati left points on the field on that 4th down late in the third quarter, early in the fourth quarter, and that ended up coming back to bite them down the stretch. Because if you think about it, had they kicked that field goal rather than going for it on 4th and goal at the 2, it would have been a tie game. And then when Burrow scored with under 2 minutes to go, they would have been up 20-16 as opposed to 17-16. And then driving for that field goal wouldn't have helped Baltimore at all. I guess, in some ways, maybe John Harbaugh learned from his previous mistakes and Zach Taylor didn't. But that was it was a well played Sunday night game, I guess. But let's be honest, it wasn't an offensive bonanza that I think a lot of people were expecting. You look at the way the game panned out. The one thing that surprised me was Lou Anarumo looked like he had Baltimore or Cincinnati lined up for an all-out blitz on a couple of occasions on that last drive, and then just dropped everybody back in coverage. And Lamar Jackson just ran behind those guys to pick up yards. But you look at the total offense, it wasn't as big as I thought number-wise. Baltimore had 325 total yards, Cincinnati 291. Both teams turned it over once. But, we saw a couple of long drives in the fourth quarter. I think that's what limited points do, because you look, Baltimore had that 8-minute drive to go for the field goal that put them up 16-10, and then Cincinnati chewed up 7:44 on the next drive when Burrow scored. So you're talking about you used up over a quarter of play for just 2 drives in the second half. And that was the Browns on the money line was a bad one. Jim and I talked about that on the Bucks report yesterday, and I said, Brandon Staley would probably try to find a way to give the game back because, we've seen him go for it on fourth down in his own territory, and that's exactly what he did. The dumbest thing, I think, from the Chargers' perspective on that was it was fourth and we'll call it between 1.5 yards and 2 yards to go. And they went to a shotgun formation, which made no sense because you look at how well they ran the ball in that game. We talked about Cleveland last week giving up 204 yards on the ground to the Falcons, and they gave up 238 to the Chargers yesterday. And the Chargers are one of the worst teams in the league when it comes to running the football. Why not let in a regular formation, put Herbert under center, and put Eckler or Kelly or whoever you want to put back there to at least give the perception that you might run the ball? I mean, you average 7 yards a carry in the game. It would have made more sense to me to actually make it look like a run. Nerdy but Worthy asking, why are the Chiefs only -7? Well, if you ask Scott Steen, and of course he's probably busy working on the script for this week's show of Once Upon a Time in Las Vegas, the rise and fall of the greatest sports betting show ever, or however long the 37-word title is for that. He'd tell you that it's because, the books might be thinking the Chiefs might be looking ahead because they get Buffalo next week. You're right. They're trying to get you to bet it. A lot of people have some blind faith in the Raiders because they beat Denver last week. They ran the ball well. But let's face it, the Raiders are still a 1-3 football team that has lost 8 of their last 9 meetings against the Chiefs, and they've lost 8 of their last 9 meetings here at Arrowhead. You look at last season, the 2 meetings weren't even close. The combined score in those 2 games, 89-23. I still think Kansas City's the better team. I know that Hunter Renfrow is going to be back for the Raiders, so that should help in the passing game. The problem is the Raiders still don't have a good defense. They can get a pass rush, but if you don't get to the quarterback, it's going to be trouble. Justin, appreciate you hitting the like button. Of course, everybody, hey, Bill, you say 7 is a lot in the NFL. Tell that to the Steelers. Because I said last week that, Buffalo was going to boat race them right out of Highmark Stadium. And that game was over after the third play from scrimmage. Let's be honest. I mean, the Steelers couldn't stop anybody. And they just got killed. I know a lot of people said, well, the Steelers are going to be good in a couple of years with all this young talent. Where's this young talent that people are talking about? I get Najee Harris could be good. He didn't look good yesterday. Pickett could be good. he threw the ball 52 times. The wide receivers, Claypool has trended down since the middle of last season. Deontay Johnson isn't exactly, he's not old, but he's not young. The offensive line is a shambles. The defense is full of older guys because you look and, Hayward's been there forever. T.J. Watt has been around for a while. And Steelers now 0-8 without Watt. I don't see how everybody thinks the Steelers are suddenly going to be good. I mean, granted, these things do happen in the NFL, but they didn't happen this week. They'll say Holmes over 2.5 touchdowns is plus 135. I saw it at plus 145. So, of course, always look around at the books to find what might work the best. But we'll talk about some of these other games that happened over the weekend. In college football, give props to Tennessee. They went into Baton Rouge and they just beat the wheels off of LSU. 40-13 final there. Tennessee will be at home next week as they take on Alabama. Alabama fell from number 1 in the rankings to number 3 as they got past Texas A&M 24-20 in a game where Bryce Young did not play. A&M had a chance, and this is another one of those games where drive Scott Reichel crazy because late in the game you need a couple yards to get to the end zone, and you go to a shotgun formation, and then you throw a pass in the case of Haynes King that's not even in the end zone on the game's last play. Didn't make a ton of sense. Mahomes is 7-1 against the Raiders, 22 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, averages 318.3 yards a game against them. Just throw out some random numbers. Yo to you too, James. Good to see you. Hope you had a good weekend. What else do we see in college football this weekend? We don't need to talk about Auburn getting rolled because that was pretty much expected. I'll tell you what, that TCU-Kansas game, College Game Day actually got a good one. A lot of times we see College Game Day go to these places and the game is like 57-6. They got a good one on Saturday. Jalen Daniels got knocked out of the game. They bring in Jason Bean. He came in and played well in the second half, got Kansas off the mat a bunch of times. They had a chance late to try to tie the game, but in the end, Max Duggan proved to be a little bit too much in a wild 38-31 game. Really good contest. Got to give a ton of credit to Sonny Dykes and what he's done at TCU so far since coming over from SMU. And you got to give credit to Lance Leopold, who's really turned around that program there. What happened with Duke? I think Duke decided that they didn't want to play football for about three quarters. I was disappointed in that. I had Duke as one of my picks over the weekend. They were down multiple scores in the fourth quarter, came back and rallied to tie it up. They scored on a punt return, then they tied the game with 8 seconds left. Couldn't make plays when it mattered. I mean, you look and you let Georgia Tech go 94 yards on a drive in the first half for a touchdown. You let them go 76 yards and chew up another 5.5 minutes on another drive that ended in a field goal. You let Georgia Tech control the clock, and it wore them down. I mean, the fourth quarter drive or the third quarter drive where they went for another field goal was another drive that took almost 6 minutes. I think Duke just ran out of gas. And, going backwards in overtime is never a good thing. An offensive pass interference call on Jontavius Robertson did not help because you would have had a first down when Higgins got down to the 9-yard line. But instead, it turned into 3rd and 19 at the 34. You threw incomplete, and then the field goal was no good. So disappointing there. The Diggs had 8 catches for 102. Josh Allen had 424 yards. The defense is good. It's going to be interesting. Hopefully, for Buffalo, you'll see some of those guys that didn't play yesterday because you look, and Jordan Poyer didn't play, and Tremaine Edmonds didn't play. Isaiah McKenzie didn't play. Dawson Knox didn't play. I mean, there were a bunch of guys that weren't in the mix. Hopefully, those guys will be back next week against the Chiefs because that should be a really good ball game. I'm surprised that that's not the Sunday night game, but it'll be in the national game, I think, in the doubleheader window for CBS. So kickoff will be at 4:25. The weird thing about this is it's the 4th time in the last 2 years that Buffalo and Kansas City will have met at GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium in the last 2 years. So Buffalo has played, 4 games against division opponents, and I guess 5 if you throw in the New England playoff game, and 4 games against the Chiefs in the last 2 seasons. AJ's Trey White's been out. I don't know if he'll be back next week. I'm wondering if they're going to wait until the Green Bay game, because after Kansas City they get a bye. They'll give them 2 more weeks to get up to speed. And let's face it, those young corners have played pretty well. I mean, I know Pittsburgh got a bunch of yards yesterday, but they got a lot of them in garbage time. I mean, let's be honest. The game was out of reach in a hurry. Let's see. Other games from college over the weekend. DE, feel bad for you. Northern Illinois was bum rushed by Toledo, 52-32. I see Lombardi did not play. It was Easton Hampton. It's bad when, you throw 4 interceptions and they're all to the same guy. Toledo was up 35-7 at the half. It was 45-7 after 3 quarters before the offense got going late for the Huskies. Quinion Mitchell, 4 interceptions, 2 pick sixes for Toledo in that game. So Toledo didn't have to do a whole lot offensively because they scored twice on defense. It's actually the Commanders and the Bears, Bill, which is just as bad. The Panthers have to play the Rams next week. And speaking of the Panthers, Matt Rule wins the coach's poll for first coach to get fired. That's the good news, I guess, if you're a fan of the Panthers, which I am not. The good news for Matt Rule, it means he gets paid $40.5 million for the next, or $40 million for the next 4.5 years to not coach the Carolina Panthers. Then you look at the fact that we're talking about the Panthers. Baker Mayfield looks like he's going to miss a couple weeks now. Sam Darnold is still on the shelf. So that takes you down to P.J. Walker. P.J. Walker is the only healthy quarterback on the active roster at the moment. You look and, when you're down to who was probably going to be the XFL MVP a couple of years ago as your quarterback against the Rams, not necessarily good news. Of course, he can't be any worse than Mayfield. Mayfield's QBR 16.5. It's the second lowest after 5 games of any quarterback since ESPN started tracking that stat in 2006. Not a stat you want to have. Other injuries we saw around the league. Rashad Penny done for the year. That's a tough blow for him. He was starting to really come into his own for Seattle. That was a wild game there against New Orleans. He suffered a broken leg yesterday. So it'll be Kenneth Walker, who had a 69-yard touchdown yesterday. Give him that. But He'll be taking over the lead duties the run game. We'll see if they get another running back, because they're down to him and DJ Dallas. Not really anybody that you want to look at. Emmanuel Mosley, who had that pick six for the 49ers late in the first half against the Panthers, tore his ACL. He's apparently going to be done for the year. And speaking of Scott Steen, he just popped up in the corner. Let's bring him in and see what he's got to talk about today. How's it going there, Scott?
What's up, buddy?
Good to see you.
Always a pleasure. Heard you talking about the Chiefs game. I heard my name, so I figured I'd pop in a little bit. And yeah, I am working pretty hard on the show. Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday are pretty busy days with the Once Upon a Time in Las Vegas. So nice. Thanks for the plug. And I know everybody and their cousin and everybody and their brother and everybody and their uncle are on the Chiefs tonight. And you look at it objectively, you just don't see any way that the Raiders can really have anything for them. But weird things happen in these games. Having said that, I don't see any other way. I don't see another play, Chris. This Chiefs defense is the story this year so far, and they've been really good, and they've been really good against the run. They are currently first in the National Football League against the run. And if you even take out the Tampa Bay game where they ran 6 times for 3 yards, the Chiefs are still fifth versus the run. They
right.
Jonathan Taylor. So if the Raiders can't get Josh Jacobs going in that run game, I just don't see a path for him.
Are you concerned at all that Kansas City might be looking ahead to next week?
Yeah,
I thought that was the only reason why the books are keeping the line where it is.
Well,
they're worried about a look ahead.
The Colts spot was a classic look ahead spot for the Chiefs, as they had Tampa Bay on national TV. The next week it was on the road, but nobody overlooks and nobody looks past Raiders week in Kansas City. That is one of the heated rivalries, as you are well aware. And yeah, it's I don't think anybody's going to be taking this team lightly. And it's a national game. It's Monday night. It's Mahomes in front of an audience, and you know how much he loves that. So
now, as a Chiefs fan, do you have any words of wisdom as far as Mahomes over 2.5 touchdowns? I know Bill McDonald was talking about that prop is plus 135. I saw it at plus 145.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I think there's good value there. I wouldn't probably play it. I wouldn't play it any less than like 6-5 or plus 120, because once they get down inside the 10, inside the 5, they do funky things. They run different looks and different packages to get different players involved and kind of have a little deception. So, but I think that's the play. I think the true odds on that are somewhere in the neighborhood 6-5, maybe plus 115. So if you're getting 120 or if you're getting 125 or better, I think that's a solid play.
Yeah, I actually got 145 this morning.
Yeah, I think you lap that up. And I did the numbers for my play of the day. I took the Chiefs team total over, and there's been 8 games in the Mahomes Carr era where they've faced each other. 7 of them, the Chiefs have put up 31 or better. The one time they didn't, they put up 28, and it was kind of a fluke that it went that way. So I'm a big fan of that. I think I would tread lightly playing the over, because I'm not sure how much the Raiders are going to be able to contribute. They may put up 14 or less in this.
So you're concerned that this, even if the Chiefs put up 34 or whatever, you're still concerned about the over?
Yeah, I am. I'm worried if the Chiefs put up 34, 35. I'm still not positive. Obviously that's what you want, and you're probably going to be good, but I'm not completely convinced. I like the odds of the Chiefs doing their part a lot better than I like the Raiders contributing.
And I see a lot of guys here, AJ's and everybody talking about they're tailing Chris Jones to get a sack is at plus 240. What do you make of that?
I haven't looked at the stat sacks. I just anecdotally watching the Raiders play a little bit this year, I don't remember them giving up a ton of sacks. I'd have to look it up. I could be completely speaking out of my butt here. Do you know their sack stats? Their sack stats? Hold
on. Carr has been sacked a total of 9 times, 150 with 154 attempts.
So they're giving up 2.5, 2.25 a game, basically. Would you say it was better than plus 200 for Jones?
Yeah, plus 240.
Now, I don't play sack stats a lot. Does a half sack count? Do you need a full sack?
That's a good question. I think it might have to be a full.
That would be my guess, but I'm not positive. I don't hate that. I think that's at plus 240. You don't have a ton of sack options for the Chiefs. You know, they bring the corner blitz a lot, and a lot of times you get a corner or a safety that'll record one. But as far as the interior line goes, if you're going to pick somebody, it's got to be Chris Jones, no question.
Are there any props on the Raiders side that you like tonight?
You know, I haven't. Again, Chris, I've been busy with the show. I haven't done a full dive into props like I would normally do in a normal season. Is there anything that have come up? Anything that you're looking at? I can certainly give you my opinion.
I was looking at Devontae Adams because I figured if the Raiders fall behind, they're going to have to throw the ball. And I know the Chiefs are 29th in the league against number one receivers.
Where's he at? Somewhere in the high 70s, low 80s, something like that?
76 and a half, I think it is.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think this is a Raiders team that is going to be frustrated trying to run the ball. And like you said, I think there's a good chance. You know, when the Chiefs are on their game, they're coming out of the gate strong. And you're going to be down 7-10 points after the first quarter, or certainly after the first half, and they're going to have to play catch up. So yeah, the weather is good here. It's going to be basically perfect football weather. It's going to be in the 70s at game time. It'll be down in the low 60s, upper 50s by the time the game's over. Very little wind to speak of. So offenses should have a good time of it. Kickers, yeah, you've got. You know what? I haven't checked Butker's status.
Well, at least you know it's not. At least you know it's not Matt Amendola who missed the kick yesterday for Butker is out.
Yeah, I thought that was the case. I know earlier last week that they were leaning towards him being out. So I like the kid they brought in, certainly better than Amendola. And that was I couldn't believe, number one, that Amendola was on a roster again. And
yeah, it just shows how desperate. When they brought him out and they were talking about it, I'm like, I didn't know this guy still had a job. And then the Prater was out with a hip injury, so I was like, okay, well, I guess they had to get somebody.
That was one of the best setup segments of all time when they show him pulling it. All right, here's the kick for the money. I pulled it. Well,
gee, what a surprise!
See that coming.
Buddy's House of Food says that if the Raiders win tonight, he'll mail you a slab of ribs.
Oh man, yeah, that sounds great. It would take a little bit of the sting off of losing to the Raiders, you know, because the Chiefs.
No, he's saying if the Raiders win tonight.
Oh, I have to give him a slab.
No. If the Raiders lose, he'll mail you a slab of ribs.
Oh yeah, I'm all over that. Oh, that's right. He's a Raiders guy.
Yeah, he mentioned that they're going to be 2-3 after tonight.
Oh God. Yeah, that's sorry, buddy. I just don't see it. And I didn't see it 2 years ago when they came in here and spanked us on a was that a Sunday night game, Monday night game?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a Sunday night game.
I know it was a night game for sure. And I'll tell you, you don't have to put much extra fuel on the Raiders Chiefs fire, but when Gruden lapped the stadium, I think that got under Andy Reid's craw a little bit. I think
kind of like Terrell Owens standing on the star in Dallas.
Yeah, a lot like that. And I think that it's a situation where Andy Reid's normally kind of a gentleman coach. He'll pull the dogs when the game is decided, but I don't think it's going to be that way against the Raiders. It certainly wasn't last year, and I look for that to continue again this year. Just kick them when they're down, buddy. That's the way it works. Now,
one last thing, Scott, because I know you want to get back to your work there. What do you make of the Miami Dolphins talking a couple weeks ago when they beat Buffalo, how, injuries are part of the game, and now all of a sudden all Miami's guys are hurt, and it's all like, well, congratulations to the Jets for beating up a bunch of guys for beating us when we have a bunch of guys that are hurt.
Well, I think, number one, the Miami fans are new to talking shit, so you got to give them a little bit of a pass. And I will also say there is a difference between not having a couple of key pieces on defense and not having either one of your first two quarterbacks. Not having Ed Oliver is not the same as having Skylar Thompson play quarterback. I'm sorry.
But getting boat raced by 23 points by the Jets, who hadn't won a division game in like 50 years.
Yeah, that's a bad team. That Jets team is a bad team. I was surprised by the Dolphins' lack of defense, because the defense had played okay. They played well enough to keep them in games and things like that, and that part of it was surprising. I really was rooting. We've talked many times, you and I and me and Scott, about the local connection that I have with Skylar Thompson, watching him come up and play throughout his career. And I was really I was really rooting for the kid, but I really had a bad feeling it was going to turn out about the way that it did. Just because you play a good game and a half in preseason. Skylar Thompson found out it's a lot different in the regular season. So
yeah, we were talking that Baker Mayfield's out now, so it's going to be probably PJ Walker going for the Panthers this week. We talked about how he was probably the XFL MVP before the league shut down due to COVID, but while he's 2-0 in the NFL, he's going to have a rough road against Aaron Donald and the Rams next week.
Yeah, I guess that's what they tell me. I faded this Rams team yesterday, and it worked out well for me. I don't really know. I don't know what the hell's the matter with the Rams. You got any theories there, buddy? Before I get out of here.
Well, they have no offensive line.
I'll answer your question here in just a second, too.
Yeah, they have no offensive line. They can't block. They don't have a receiver outside of Cooper Kupp other than Higbee, and they don't run the ball.
Other than that, they're pretty good, though.
Yeah, other than that, they're pretty good on offense. I mean, can't fault the defense. The defense keeps them in games. It wasn't the defense's fault they had a punt blocked and, Stafford fumbled for a scoop six in the opening couple minutes of that game yesterday.
Right. And sorry, buddy. You also can't discount how much it takes out of a defense having to spend so much time on the field. When your offense can't get anything going and that defense has to go out there again after just 3 plays or 5 plays or whatever. It's brutal. Bill asking about the Edwards-Helaire prop that he's been getting less carries. He's been averaging about 10 yards a carry. He's running for better than 5 yards a carry. But this is a Kansas City running back room that is very much a committee. It is they like McKinnon, and they're trying to get Pacheco more involved. And there's a guy, the very definition of runs angry. If you see Pacheco run, he is very difficult to bring down with one guy, and he's fast. I like this kid. I can't believe we got him in I think a 6th round pick or 7th round pick out of Rutgers.
Yeah, 6th. Yeah. Well, because he played at Rutgers. Nobody thinks about Rutgers when you think about football.
So I would tread lightly on any Chiefs running back props. It certainly could hit. And those guys, the line is doing a great job of giving them an opportunity to bust a run. And Hilaire's had a 52-yarder this season, so they do have the potential to get him into the second level and get some yards. But if I was going to play any Chiefs running back, and he would be the one, I think Hilaire is still 1A.
And JC said that Richel's pick of the day was Mahomes to have a run of at least 11 yards.
One single run, 10.5 over longest run.
Yeah.
That's his longest run so far this season. He hasn't run further than 11 yards on any single run. So I would say that's the under is probably the play there. But, having said that, Mahomes has good vision, and he's not afraid to take off, especially if it's 3rd down and he has an opportunity to pick up the 1st down. He's not going to get you those extra yards. He's not dipping his shoulder. He's not running anybody over. He's going to take the out. And I'm sure you can tell Andy has beat that into him. Slide, get out of bounds, don't take a hit. So yeah, that's Andrew says I should rejoin you on just parlays. We'll see what happens after the season. We'll see what happens for basketball after we're no longer doing our football show here. But
yeah, because I know that takes up quite a bit of the week.
It does, and I know people watch that show and go, "Man, how long did it take them to write that? Why don't they write some funny stuff?" But no, we're having a lot of fun. I think we're finding our voice. I think we're getting funnier every week because I write most of it, and I'm kind of learning what he can do and what he can't do and what he's good at and it takes a while. If you watch the first season of Cheers, it sucked. So,
like I said, I still haven't seen Rocky and Trevor Lawrence in the same place at the same time.
Watch this week's episode, buddy. We address that.
So you stole my idea?
Nope. I did not steal your idea, but there is a Rocky Trevor Lawrence sketch that I think you'll enjoy.
I'll have to check it out.
Rachel's pick was under. Yeah, I think that's the play on that.
Now watch, he'll run for 12 yards, and then we'll have Rachel bitching about it.
It could absolutely happen. There's, he's got decent wheels. He's just under a directive from Andy not to run as much. So he's going to pass on some opportunities. But if he gets that lane, if he gets man-to-man coverage and he drops back and everybody turns their back on him and they need 6-7 yards for a first down, he will absolutely take off up the middle. And then once he gets right at 11 yards, he'll slide, and they'll credit him with 10.5.
So you want to plug your show there, Scott?
Absolutely. And then I'll leave you to it. I know you got a lot of picks to get to, and you don't need extra time from me taking up time on your show. So
yeah, actually, all those picks for the one game that there is tonight.
It's brutal. Is there no like preseason NBA or NHL or anything?
I don't know. Hockey season starts tomorrow.
Okay, because I know they played over in where the hell they played?
Prague.
Yeah,
at the O2 Arena.
I almost said Yugoslavia, which Scott gives me shit every time and reminding me that country does not exist. So
hey, but the Yugo still does.
Just kind of shows. At least I'm not making Ottoman Empire references. So once we get to Prussia, everything's going to be fine. Hey, it's a show that I do with my partner, Jordan McKinney, a.k.a. Iraqi Foray. He's a very funny, talented kid. And believe it or not, he's very, very knowledgeable about football. He's not a bettor, although we're making him a bettor. He's starting to make some bets. But he is a huge football fan. He is much smarter than he appears on the show. And we're also kind of starting to arc him to get smarter, because we don't think that people are going to like watch week in, week out when him just being a complete dumb shit. And so we're starting to let him get a little bit smarter and put some of his own spin on it. But hey, it's Once Upon a Time in Las Vegas, the rise. Chris, you do what I always do. You said the rise and fall. It's not the fall. It's the rise of the greatest sports betting show in the world. So,
I knew it had like 47 words. So
it releases, it drops, as the kids say, somewhere around noon on Thursdays, and do check it out. We have a lot of fun, and we take our handicapping segments very seriously, where we do have experts on. We had you and Reichel on last week, and we've got two of the hottest handicappers over there at Mason Foles and David Delano that are on there right now they're going to be doing the show tomorrow when we tape. So make sure you check that out. We have a lot of fun. We're even doing a contest to get people to comment more, giving away $100 gift card for everybody, for a drawing for everybody that comments. Not for everybody that comments. You're in it into a drawing. I think last week we had like 23 people. So, you got a decent shot. It's a good overlay there.
It's better than winning the lottery.
No, it is not.
No, I'm saying your odds are better than winning the lottery.
Oh yes, you're much more likely. It's not as good, but you're much more of a favorite to win the $100 than you are the lottery. So, and keep doing what you're doing, man. I listen a lot. A lot of times I've got it on in the background when I'm working, and it's
fun to talk to a wall for an hour.
I should get $1 every time you mention my fucking name. Jesus, it feels like I'm still on the show.
Well, I'm trying to make sure you get plugs.
If Steen were here, he would like, God damn it. So yeah, it's great, and you guys you're doing a great job, bud, and keep up the great work, and we'll probably see you on the show for next week's episode if you're around.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about last week, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, you guys, it's kind of a carryover of all of our videos, but some of the best people comment on these videos. I've got it on my daily videos. I see it in your live stuff. JC said I'm a bad influence on Rocky. I'm working on it. He's a pretty clean cut dude. He's just a nice guy from Seattle. He went back for he had plane tickets. He went back. He was hoping to see the Mariners play live, but it didn't work out. But I guess he was at the stadium. They opened the stadium for that game too. When they
so he was at T-Mobile Park.
Yeah, he was at T-Mobile Park when they came back from the 8-1 down.
Yeah,
and he was with his dad. I said, cherish that moment, man, because as long as you and your dad live, you'll remember that forever. So
yeah, I mean, I was at T-Mobile Park back when it was called Safeco Field. I was actually at the second game since after the park opened and watched Randy Johnson pitch for the Diamondbacks against the Mariners back in 1999.
Yep. Anyway, all right, buddy, go do your thing. Appreciate you having me on, and of course, appreciate everybody in the comment section saying hey and everything. I miss doing these shows. It was a lot of fun. We'll see what happens in the off season, and we'll see where
James said, "What about the guys that have been here from day one?" Apparently, he wants a gift card for being here since day one.
I've got some guys that have been here for 4 or 5 years, as long as I've been doing this, and you see them, and it's just I'm humbled by it. I really am, because I've always said I'm no better, no worse than anybody else. I'm just a guy that has more time, and that's really. If you've got a brain, if you understand math, if you understand trends, it really just comes down to how much time you can devote to it.
True.
And luckily, I don't have another day job. This is my day job. So, I owe all my success not to being smarter or better contacts or any of that bullshit that cappers will tell you. I have success because I have more time. That's it. So, anyway.
Scott Steen, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, man. And good luck.
Always a pleasure, Scott.
I'll definitely come on next week. We'll talk about the Bills Chiefs.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
All right, man. You guys take
Thanks.
care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Scott Steen, everybody. Like he said, host of the great handicapping show, Once Upon a Time in Vegas, the rise of the greatest sports betting show in history. And like he said, it's on Thursdays at noon. Gives you a rundown of all the games for the week in the NFL. Of course, he'll have a real barn burner to talk about with the Thursday night game with the Bears and the Commanders. Like they said, ooh, look, it's a no-nonsense NFC battle. They should have just said points optional. It'll probably be just like this last week's game with the Colts and Broncos. With that said, like we said, there's only one game on the slate today. I know everybody's really excited to see the Chiefs and the Raiders. We will talk about, and obviously when there's only one game, we can't do shot in the dark. I'm not going to give you guys 18 props with a bunch of random numbers. But we do have some good ones out there to put the board. Yeah, James said it's funny how some of these guys come on here talking shit, and then when they lose, there's nowhere to be found. Well, that happens a lot, unfortunately. I mean, you remember, was it when Steen was here? It might have been when Jim was here. We had the guy ranting about how we took favorites all the time. Or, because, we didn't win every parlay like anybody does. If you show me somebody that won every parlay, they're probably Biff Tannen from Back to the Future, walking around with his sports almanac from, the 50s through the 80s, and he's betting in advance. It just doesn't happen that way. But yeah, then there's a stretch where we won it was like 9 in a row or something like that, and the guy who was bitching disappeared, and that's just the way it works. People like to bitch, but either A, they don't want to put the work in, or B, they just like to try and make other people's lives miserable and piss people off. Yeah, we live at the 56% line. There you go. Real quick, just do the quick housekeeping stuff. In case you can't get enough of my bets, and of course, God knows there's enough of them on any given day, right? You can get my premium bets by clicking the link in the show box below. Also, check out the Winners and Winers website and the YouTube channels for free picks all day. Like Scott said, he's got his free videos. Rachel has his on there. So do guys like David Delano and Mason Foles. So they are there. Starting tomorrow, I'm going to actually start running a promo for you guys that watch the show. So if you jump in and buy premium picks, you'll get a discount that other people won't. So watch out for that. I'm also going to try and come up with a couple of different ones just for guys that watch the show that you can jump in on as well. Of course, make sure that you hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so you'll never miss the show. I know I say this every day when we're here, but, unless you live under a rock, you know that we've been on at 2 p.m. Eastern, Monday to Friday for going on almost 11 months now. So, I mean, we've been around. Where have you been? But, yeah, make sure you tune in, hit that. That way you'll always get a reminder knowing when we're going on the air. Always a plus. Did I see the video? Oh, yeah, where I did see Draymond Green and Jordan Poole. Let's face it, Draymond Green is basically no different than he's this generation's Dennis Rodman, a hothead with limited skill, but, who's a physical player. Now he's supposedly taken time away from the team or whatever. Let's face it, Draymond Green is probably more pissed off that he's the 4th or 5th option at best on that Golden State team, and he's not really relevant at this point in the Golden State rotation. But he's still going to get paid, 8 figures to do nothing. then I'm just going to look and see what his contract is because I always love to see these bloated contracts. Like John Wall got paid $47 million last year to not play basketball. Draymond Green under contract this year for $25,806,468. Okay, and he's got a player option next year, which I'm sure he'll opt into because who's going to walk away from $27.5 million? I don't trust. I don't like Green. I didn't like him at Michigan State. I don't like him now. He's a good defensive player. I'll give him that. He's basically the Ben Simmons of power forwards when it comes to offense. And he's had injury issues. You look in his first 4 years in the league, he played at least 79 games. Then he played 76 in 2016-17. Since then, it's gone down 70, 66, 43, 63, 46. His scoring averages have dropped. I mean, he hasn't averaged double digits in scoring in the last 4 years. The guy's a head case. I don't have any faith in him. I don't like him. It wouldn't surprise me if Golden State tried to move on from him in some form or fashion, either by reducing his role or actually finding someone dumb enough to trade for him. Because he's going to disrupt the chemistry of that team. And I'm not a Golden State fan by any stretch of the imagination, but, like him or not, they're still a legitimate title contender in the NBA. And speaking of the NBA, we'll talk more about that in the coming week because guess what? Basketball season starts next week. Hockey season, like we said, starts tomorrow. We actually have middle of the week college football this week too, because you'll have Louisiana plays Marshall on Wednesday night. Then you get Baylor, West Virginia, and Temple, UCF on Thursday. Then there's Navy, SMU, and UTSA, Florida International on Friday. And then you got a slew of ranked matchups on Saturday. I think there's 6 games with multiple ranked teams. You've got Alabama, Tennessee. That's a matchup of number 3 and number 6. You got number 8 Oklahoma State going to TCU to face the number 13 Horned Frogs. You've got NC State ranked 15th in the country, traveling to face number 18 Syracuse. When's the last time you thought about seeing Syracuse as a ranked team? You got number 10 Penn State going to the Big House. They're going to face number 5 Michigan. Let me see what the other ones are because I know there's. Yeah, Mississippi State's going to go on the road to face Kentucky. Kentucky's going to have to hope they have Will Levis back after they looked absolutely terrible losing to South Carolina without him on Saturday night. Everybody down here talking about how, whoa, South Carolina's got a signature win. Yeah, you beat a ranked team with a backup quarterback. Congratulations. And then you've got number 7 USC traveling to face number 20 Utah. Utah disappointed me last Saturday. I thought they were going to beat UCLA. Got to give a lot of credit to what Chip Kelly's done with the Bruins. Still undefeated. They've come off back-to-back wins now over ranked teams as they beat Washington and Utah. I'll have to see what UCLA can do on the road because both those games came, of course, at the Rose Bowl. And before I get into the picks here, let's give a lot of credit to James Madison. You're talking about a team that moved up from the FCS to the FBS. It's their first season at the FBS level. They're 5-0. They're ranked number 25 in the country. They come in off a 42-20 win on the road over Arkansas State. They'll play Georgia Southern on the road this week. And this is a team that beat App State. And, App State kind of fizzled out over the weekend. Really disappointing performance as they were beaten by Texas State in a game where they were favored by, 2 or 3 touchdowns. But App State now they're 3-3. So maybe people will quiet down about that win they had over Texas A&M earlier in the season. Bill said Poole scored 25 last night. I think Poole he's the front runner for 6th man of the year, and that's something else that we'll talk about because Winners and Winers is working on a NBA preview guide, kind of like we did for the tournament and everything, and we did for the NFL And for Major League Baseball, that should be coming out in I imagine the next week or so. I did the award races for all of that. So that should be coming out. I know we've also got a hockey one that was in the works. I'm not sure when that's going to be out. I would hope soon. Bill says Poole is going to be Steph's replacement. I could see that. But he's also a very versatile sixth man right now. And again, as we said at the top of the show, Happy Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day, or, if you just want to call it Happy Second Monday in October, if that works for you. And, of course, for everybody in Canada, Happy Thanksgiving. With that said, we'll move on to the two for the money. Like I said, you know what you're going to see here. You're going to see stuff about the Chiefs and Raiders. So we got to work with what's there. I'm going to go with the Chiefs over the Raiders. I know Buddies is hoping that the Raiders win. He's also hoping he doesn't have to send a rack of ribs to Steen. Nobody ever sends me food. What the hell's up with that? Steen just comes on the show for 15 minutes, and all of a sudden people are talking about they're going to send him food. This is crap. I'm filing a protest. Anyway, the Chiefs should win this one. Like we said, they've won 8 of the last 9 meetings against the Raiders. They've won 8 of the last 9 against the Raiders at Arrowhead. The last year's meetings combined score of 89-23. I know getting Renfro back is a big boost because, it helps take pressure off of Adams. I need to see more from Darren Waller. He hasn't been as involved as I thought he would be. Mac Hollins has had a couple big games, which was surprising. But still, I think the Chiefs are going to have a little bit too much in the tank. They're not going to be caught looking ahead. Like Scott said, it was a prime example when they lost to the Colts in a game one. I was on once upon a time in Las Vegas. I thought that the Chiefs would have won that one handily, and of course they didn't. But for Steen to come on, he said that they were going to lose to Tampa Bay on the Bucs pregame show last week with myself and Jim Williams and Big Game James Canada. So for Steen to back the Chiefs at home, I've got to agree with him and say that Kansas City should win this one. The Raiders will be better soon. I can't tell you when, but until I see that they can get past Kansas City, it's one of those things. To be the man, you got to beat the man, and I've got to see the Raiders actually do it. Same token, I'm taking Mahomes over 2.5 touchdown passes, like Bill was talking about. He said at plus 135. I saw it at plus 145. I think that was might have been BetMGM. I can't remember. Let me look, because it might have shifted since I actually saw that this afternoon. Now it's at 130 on BetMGM, so it's going back, but it's still on the plus side of what the true odds should be for that. Like Scott said, probably 115, 120, so you're getting some good money there. I'm going to go with Devontae Adams over 6.5 receptions. Like I said, the Chiefs are number 29 in the league against number 1 receivers. Keep that in mind for next week with Stephon Diggs. L'Jarius Sneed, great tackler at the corner position, but he's given up 21 receptions on 27 targets. I imagine he's going to be the one on Adams. If the Raiders fall behind, they're going to have to throw. Adams is going to get involved. He's going to get his catches. And I look for Mahomes to go over 279.5 passing yards. You think about it. The one team that let him throw over this number this season was the Cardinals. The Raiders are ranked right down there with the Cardinals in pass defense. So there's that. Bill said Jacobs hasn't been that effective. True, a lot of his yards came last week in the game against Denver. He's averaging 84 yards a game, but like you said, a lot of his game flow because they've been in close games. They lost by 5 to the Chargers. They lost in overtime to the Cardinals when they blew a 20-0 lead. They lost by 2 to Tennessee, and then they were ahead last week, so they used it to run the clock. He might not be as much of a factor this week because if you fall behind and the Chiefs' offense is clicking like they were against Tampa Bay last week, it's going to be tough for you to stay committed to the ground game. I mean, Jacobs, he's averaged 4.8 yards a carry. Let's not take anything away from him. But like I said, he had a good week last week against Denver. He had 28 carries for 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. You look at the games before that, he averaged 5.7 yards against the Chargers, but he only ran the ball 10 times. Then he ran 19 times, but only got 69 yards against the Cardinals, which is weird because the Cardinals are not good defensively. And then he had 13 carries for 66 against Tennessee. But again, he didn't get a ton of run there because they fell behind and had to throw the ball. And that's what we could be looking at here. And like Scott said, the Chiefs, number 1 in the league in run defense, giving up 65.5 yards a game so far. So that could be a major factor. And that ties us into 4 for the show here. Because, look, I have Josh Jacobs under 62.5. I think he'll probably get to about 50, maybe 55. But if the Chiefs build a 2-score lead and force the Raiders to throw the ball, it's going to be tough for him to move the ball. Yeah, speaking of the Bills, Buddy said an insane stat. They've outscored opponents 44-0 in the third quarter. They've given up just 7 points in the second half this season. So they make adjustments. Of course, the 7 points they gave up were against Miami in that game that they lost. But you take what you can get. I don't know if that's going to hold up next week because Kansas City, obviously, a very good offensive team. I know Scott was saying he'd tread lightly with the over. I just think that we got the potential for fireworks here. I mean, we saw the Raiders and the Chiefs, or the Raiders and the Broncos total 55 last week, and we saw how bad Denver was against the Colts on Sunday or Thursday, I should say. The Chiefs totaled 72 in their game against Tampa Bay. You look at the last 10 meetings, or the last 4 meetings between these teams, going back to 2020, 72, 66, 55, 57, the combined point totals. So any of those would put you past the number for this game. Vegas had set point totals for those games at 54.5, 56.5, 53.5, and 48. This one's 51.5. For some reason, when these teams meet, you see a lot of points. And, you can grab it at 51.5 at a lot of books. Unibet and Bet Rivers have moved it up to 52. Obviously, when you're trying to go over, you grab the lowest point number you can find. We talked about Jacobs there a minute ago. Devontae Adams over 76.5 rushing yards. This ties right back into his receptions. If you're going to have to throw him the ball or throw the ball repeatedly to move the sticks and to try to get back in the game, he's going to get his yards. I mean, even if you're playing that, cushion where that 3 deep zone or whatever, because you're trading yards for time, if he catches a bunch of 10, 12-yard passes, he's going to go past that number pretty easily. And finally, Daniel Carlson, over 1.5 field goals. I mean, you look at his numbers, and Carlson, the Raiders, for starters, 20% putting the ball in the end zone, in the red zone this year. Carlson, 12 of 12 on field goals. He's kicked 10 field goals of 39 yards or less this season, which means the line of scrimmage was the 22 and in. So unless the Raiders somehow magically start punching the ball in the end zone, Carlson should get plenty of opportunities. Like I said, 12 field goals in 4 games, including several last week in the win over the Broncos. In case you're wondering, on the road, he's 5 for 5, including a 55-yard kick this season. The 55-yarder came against the Chargers in the opener. He was also 3 for 3 against Tennessee on the road a couple weeks ago. But, Carlson is a very effective kicker. And basically, with the Raiders struggling to put the ball in the end zone, might as well roll with it. JC says the field goal of Raiders bet is money. Yeah, I mean, 20%. How do you convert 20% of your trips into the red zone into touchdowns? That is just horrible. I mean, you're talking 1 out of 5. That's it. And I mean, it's just ridiculous. You'd think that you'd be a lot better than that, but I mean, what can you do? It's the Raiders. At least they're not Denver. Denver is absolutely abysmal when it comes to converting in the red zone, but that's a whole different story that we'll get to later in the week. That will do it for the Monday edition of Just Parlays with Chris King. I want to thank Scott Steen for stopping by. I want to thank all of you guys for stopping by and making the show more entertaining, because it makes it a little easier to interact, at least when there's comments, as opposed to talking to the wall for an hour. The Chiefs have converted, 73.68% of their drives in the red zone into touchdowns this season. I think that translates to, it's not 11 out of 14, I don't think. Let me double check. No, that would be 785. But yes, 73+% according to team rankings. They converted 62.2% of their drives last year into the touchdowns on the road or overall, which is a high percentage. By comparison, the Raiders last year 49.23%. So less than half their trips in the red zone last year were converted into touchdowns. But glad to have you all here. Like I said, we'll be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern to talk about the start of the NHL season. We'll talk about the NBA or the Major League Baseball divisional round. We'll maybe talk a little NBA. And who knows? But the one thing we can guarantee that we'll talk about in tomorrow's show, of course, is just parlays. And like I said, I'll have some promo codes that you guys can use should you decide to jump in on the premium side as well. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the game tonight. And good luck with your bets. We'll be back to talk about it all tomorrow. For the Winners and Whiners Network and for Just Parlays, I'm Chris King. So long.